The Great Dismal Swamp stretches across the border of Virginia and North Carolina like a bruised scar on the landscape. Today, if you drive past its outer rims, you see standard American highways, gas stations, and the occasional modern development. But step a few yards into the interior, where the cypress knees rise from black, tea-colored water like gnarled fingers, and the Spanish moss hangs thick enough to choke the sunlight, and the 21st century vanishes. It is a place where time slows down, then stops entirely. For centuries, Americans looked at this vast, unforgiving morass and saw only a wasteland, a dangerous malaria-ridden void that needed to be drained, conquered, and forgotten. George Washington himself once surveyed it, seeing it as nothing more than a lucrative timber opportunity and a logistics problem to be solved with canals. But beneath the mud and the suffocating canopy lay one of the most astonishing, deeply buried secrets in American history. It wasn't a secret of gold or lost Spanish galleons. It was a secret of human defiance. For nearly 200 years, deep within a swamp that mapmakers labeled impenetrable, thousands of people did the impossible. They built a hidden, entirely sovereign society. They were the Maroons, enslaved people who chose to trade the predictable cruelty of the plantations for the unpredictable dangers of the wilderness, creating a secret civilization right under the noses of the American South. To understand how a secret society could exist for generations within the borders of the developing United States, you have to understand the geography of the Great Dismal. Before the logging companies chipped away at it, the swamp spanned over 1 million acres. It was a shifting labyrinth of quicksand, dense briar patches, venomous cottonmouth snakes, and bears. To the white planters of Virginia and North Carolina, it was a terrifying purgatory. To a runaway slave, it was a sanctuary. The story of the Maroons didn't start with a mass exodus. It started with individual acts of desperate courage. In the early 1700s, as the tobacco plantations of the Tidewater region grew increasingly brutal, a few brave souls broke their chains and ran toward the one place their masters feared to follow. Imagine arriving at the edge of the swamp at midnight. Behind you are the hounds, the overseers, and the certainty of torture or death. Ahead of you is a wall of pitch-black darkness, the hum of millions of mosquitoes, and water that conceals God knows what. You step in. The mud sucks at your boots, then your bare feet. The water rises to your knees, then your chest. You push through the briars, your skin tearing, until the sounds of this plantation fade, replaced by the terrifying, beautiful symphony of the wild. The first escapees found that the swamp was not a uniform pool of mud. Deep within its interior lay islands, high, dry ridges of land covered in oak and pine, completely invisible from the outside world. It was on these hidden plateaus that the Maroon civilization was born. As the decades rolled on, these isolated runaways found each other. They did not just survive, they organized. By the late 18th century, the Great Dismal Swamp was home to a permanent, self-sustaining population estimated to be in the thousands. They built communities that resembled the West African villages their ancestors had been stolen from. They constructed small, sturdy cabins out of cypress logs and mud. Because they couldn't risk the smoke of large fires during the day, they learned to cook only at night, using deeply dug pits that dispersed the smoke through the thick canopy of leaves. Their economy was a marvel of adaptation. They hunted deer and bear, fished the pristine amber waters of Lake Drummond, a massive, mysterious lake at the very center of the swamp, and gathered wild berries. But they also practiced agriculture. On the hidden islands, they cleared small plots of land to grow corn and grain, using tools they either fashioned from wood or smuggled from the outside world. Remarkably, a unique culture began to emerge. Children were born in the swamp who had never seen a white man, never experienced a whip, and never known the concepts of master or slave. To these children, the swamp was not a hiding place, it was their homeland. They grew up with an unparalleled knowledge of the terrain. They could navigate the trackless bogs in pitch darkness, read the movement of the birds to detect intruders, and use the native plants for medicine. The outside world was not entirely cut off, however. The Maroons developed a sophisticated underground trade network with the intra-locals, enslaved laborers who were rented out by their masters to cut timber and dig canals along the swamp's periphery. Every morning, hundreds of enslaved canal diggers shivered in the freezing waters, hacking away at the roots to build the Great Dismal Swamp Canal, a project managed by George Washington's company. By night, these laborers met secretly with the deep swamp Maroons. The Maroons would trade hand-carved shingles, pelts, and gathered goods for essential supplies, iron pots, knives, salt, and occasionally firearms. This counter-economy was an open secret among the white overseers. They knew that the shingles magically appearing at the edges of the lumber camps were the work of runaways, but the Maroons were too dangerous to pursue, and the labor was cheap. The white establishment chose a policy of willful blindness, preferring to take their profits rather than risk their lives entering the heart of the darkness. The sheer audacity of the Maroon society reached its peak during the early 1800s. The swamp had become a massive station on an unconventional underground railroad. But unlike the network that led to the North or Canada, this railroad ended right there, in the mud. For many, freedom didn't mean crossing the Mason-Dixon line. It meant disappearing into the southern wilderness. Rumors of this hidden kingdom spread through the slave quarters of the South like wildfire. It became a symbol of hope, a mythic place where black men and women lived free, armed, and independent. The legendary slave rebel Nat Turner is believed to have planned to retreat into the Great Dismal Swamp with his army after his 1831 insurrection, knowing that no militia in the United States could defeat him in the bogs. When his rebellion was suppressed, the white authorities launched panicked, heavily armed expeditions into the swamp's edges, terrified that the Maroons would join the uprising. Yet every time the militias ventured past the tree line, the swamp swallowed them up, forcing them back with disease, disorientation, and the constant threat of ambush. The Maroons developed guerrilla tactics that predated modern jungle warfare by a century. They built submerged paths, underwater walkways made of logs pinned beneath the surface of the mud. To a regular eye, it looked like a treacherous bog, but a Maroon knew exactly where to step to cross a deep chasm. If a search party attempted to follow, they would step off the hidden logs and sink into the quicksand, becoming easy targets or simply drowning in the mire. The end of this secret civilization came not with a dramatic battle, but with the grand sweep of history. When the American Civil War broke out, the Union Army occupied the coastal regions of Virginia and North Carolina. The Union soldiers were shocked to find hundreds of black men emerging from the depths of the Great Dismal Swamp, offering their services as scouts. These men knew the back ways, the shortcuts, and the hidden paths better than any military mapmaker. They guided Union troops through the Confederacy's blind spots, turning their former sanctuary into a weapon against the system that had sought to enslave them. With the Emancipation Proclamation and the end of the war, the reason for the Maroon Society's existence vanished. The hidden islands were gradually abandoned as their inhabitants stepped out into the light of a new, albeit still imperfect, America. The cabins rotted away, the submerged paths sank deeper into the muck, and the jungle reclaimed the fields. For over a century, the story was treated as a myth, a collection of ghost stories told by old fishermen on Lake Drummond. But in the 2000s, archaeologists led by Dr. Dan Sayers began excavating the interior islands of the swamp. What they found shocked the academic world. Thousands of artifacts, including stone tools, pottery, and the foundations of cabins, proving that generations of people had lived, loved, raised families, and died in total freedom in the heart of the American South. The Great Dismal Swamp Maroons represent one of the most remarkable chapters of American resilience. Right in the middle of a nation defined by slavery, they carved out a hidden republic of the free. They proved that even when the world is stacked entirely against you, there is always a way to find a path through the dark, to build a home in the wilderness, and to whisper freedom to the wind.